Hello, Global Anabaptism students. I'd like to highlight a few details about our class and give you a very short overview of Mennonites and Brethren in Christ in Africa. You should be watching my short slide and lecture video each week. Last week was on Asia and Mennonites there. This week on Africa, Anabaptists in Africa, and next week we'll focus on Latin America. Review your chapter vocabulary terms that I've listed on Haiku. That will help you when you take the quiz. The quiz this week on Africa should be taken by Friday, December 12, and Latin America by December 18. We are finishing up rapidly. I hope you are aware of that. Read the assigned chapter in Through Fire and Water chapters that Stephen Nolt, a professor and good friend of mine at Goshen College, has written. We'll have our review session on the first exam day, December 22 at 10:30 in the morning. You're not going to present your country project. I'm going to ask you questions. I want to find out if you understand, if you thought about, if you analyzed your country more than just making a report. Now let me give you some help. If you're doing Canada, I think somebody's doing Canada, I forget who it is. I have a book in my classroom that you might want to take a look at, focused on Canada. There's a series, a Global Mennonite History book series. One volume is on Canada and the United States. Here's a volume on Anabaptists and Mennonites in Africa. They're in my classroom. I'd be glad to share them with you, and you could get information from them for your country project. Here's a book on Latin America you might want to take a look at. Again, these books are written by, in this case, an author from Latin America, and it was translated from Spanish then into English. Here's a book written by an Asian Mennonite about Mennonites in Asia, and a book, if you're doing Germany or a country in Europe, a little volume on Mennonites and Anabaptists in Europe. Just wanted to make you aware of that 5-volume Global Anabaptist Mennonite series. Not very much read, but they are available, and they're in Mr. Yoder's classroom if you would like to stop by and take a look at one of them. Briefly then, Mennonites and Anabaptists in Africa. I've told many of you the story in world history class about King Menelik I, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba from the Bible, who took the religion of Judaism down to Ethiopia. In the 1st century AD, then, we learn about the Ethiopian man who was in Jerusalem worshiping God and takes Christianity back to Ethiopia when Philip the evangelist brings him to Christ. In the 300s AD, at the time of Emperor Constantine in Europe, King Ezana will make Orthodox Christianity the official religion in Ethiopia, much like Constantine did up in Europe. Today, 20th and 21st century, the big church in Africa, the biggest single conference of Anabaptist Mennonites is in Ethiopia, the Masorete Christos Church, which emerged out of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church in the 1950s and 60s, when there was revival among the youth in the 1960s. Masorete Christos means something like built on the foundation of Christ, which is a wonderful biblical expression, and one that Menno Simons would have loved because that was his favorite verse, 1 Corinthians 3, verse 11. In the 1980s, the Masorete Christos Church was forced to go secret in an era of Marxist/communism. In the 1990s, they emerged with many, many numbers after having been persecuted and having gone underground. Read that miraculous story in Through Fire and Water. And as I said, today it's the single largest conference of Anabaptist Mennonites in the world. This chart on your slide shows the different countries of Africa. 23 out of about 54, so about half of the countries of Africa have Mennonite congregations in them. Some of the larger ones are like Angola, Cote d'Ivoire. The Democratic Republic, DR, of Congo has about 250,000 members. Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, Tanzania are some of the big ones. Zambia and Zimbabwe are some of the big countries with large baptized members. The column over on the right shows that there are in some countries several conferences, like Kenya has 5 organized conferences with 34,000 members. But as I said, with Ethiopia, you'll see a 1 for organized body, 1 conference, the Masoretic Christos Church, with almost 250,000 members in the church. In Zimbabwe, it was a Brethren in Christ and a Baptist group that went there in missionary effort, late 19th century. Women are in leadership in natural and normal ways in Zimbabwe. The church is in great poverty, but about 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, the Brethren in Christ in Zimbabwe hosted the Mennonite World Conference in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. In Africa, you live amidst poverty and economic difficulty, struggling to manage limited resources, and how do you sustain your church, pay pastors, without money aid from Western churches that used to come during the mid-20th century. AIDS and the HIV virus is always an issue in the churches in Africa. War, violence, how do you practice peace and nonviolence? How do you manage significant growth in numbers with limited church buildings and rising membership? And how do you help Mennonites on other continents to consider how Africa's story might influence other countries? And so that's the story about Anabaptist Mennonites in Africa. Hope you enjoy the story. Have a good day.